not only out in front, but doing it easy. Working like hell in the water, because the other schools are not going to hand it to you.
Since 1893, Sydney's GPS Head of the River Regatta has been the ultimate test for schoolboy rowers. 8 crews vying for the Major Rennie Trophy and bragging rights to be Head of the River champions. Major Rennie fought in the Civil War for the Union at Baton Rouge in 1862. Held across 3 iconic locations, the Parramatta River, the Nepean River, and now the world-class International Regatta Centre in Penrith. With racing so competitive that many good coaches go an entire career without claiming victory even once. This race is the pinnacle of both physical endurance and mental fortitude. The showcase for some of the greatest coaching minds in schoolboy rowing history: Kenson Heaps, Isla Lee, Gary Ubergang, Rusty Robinson, David Jennings, and more. One name that was whispered in awe and reverence among rowers and lingered in rowing circles for decades. I first heard of him 35 years ago. Today I sit across from him for the first time, finally putting a face to the mystique. A man whose crews achieved such scorching speeds, it often seemed they weren't just rowing but taking flight. Between 1965 and 73, Michael rowed for Sydney Rowing Club and represented New South Wales and Australia many times, competing at the Mexico Olympics for a silver medal, at the Munich Games in the 8. He has coached winning crews in every class of boat at senior level at national championships. In 1978, as head coach of the Sydney Rowing Club, won every sweep or senior championship, as well as the single scull and quad scull events. Coached the Australian 8 at the 1976 Montreal Olympics and the 1978 World Championships. He believes that numbers and statistics tell a deeper story. Later, I'll turn the tables and reveal his own staggering statistics. A mystical figure to those who rowed against his crews but never met him, today we go beyond the reputation to uncover what truly makes him tick. A few hidden gems you'll discover: the 3 books his winning crews read, pearls of wisdom from his Winning Edge program, complete with Isaac Newton's laws of motion, the dangers of copying, the secret behind all-in-one stroke, the elusive concept of the ninth man and how to unlock it, the 4 minutes in a race most people neglect. Prepare for a deep dive into the mind of a master, a rowing mystery thriller. Half man, half myth, all legend, Michael Morgan. Here we go. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Michael, the early years, you're at Warrawee, you're going to Newington in Stanmore. Your father went to Riverview.
Correct, yes. He rowed in the 1926 head of the river, which was on the Parramatta.
Right. And so you have a distinguished schoolboy rowing career at Newington.
Well, we won in our centenary year, which I was lucky enough to be in. And
that was 63.
63.
And then in 64 you come second.
Second.
Ernie Chapman?
Yes.
Yes. What does he teach you? What does he start to teach you about rowing?
Yes, well, he won the head of the river with his crew in 1966. Pretty old-fashioned in his ways in some respects. He coached me in 64, and when I replaced him to coach it, to take on the 8 at Newington. Yeah, my school coach before him was Tom Chessel, who coached and coxed the Helsinki 8, and Ernie was in the Helsinki 8. And then when I left school, Phil Kaiser at Sydney Rowing Club, he was the stroke of the Helsinki 8. So the 52 Olympians had a pretty big impact on me.
What did you learn from him?
I learned a bit from all of them. I mean, Ernie was very much a disciplinarian, because I always laugh that, and I've told the story many times, not in my year, but another year, he thought the boys weren't trying hard enough and they all got the cane when they went back to the boat shed. But,
wow. So was it true that he got into a bit of trouble for working the boys a bit harder?
Look, he didn't get into trouble, but he was rumoured that he certainly was a hard taskmaster, and it was rumoured in the end that the boys weren't enjoying it and that they were being worked too hard.
Right. But then you go and work them even harder.
Correct.
So what is it about just putting in the long miles, Michael? What is it about that?
Well, I suppose you've got to put in quality miles. I mean, rowing is a habit, and there are good and bad habits. And if you just do kilometres after kilometres practising faults, you become very good at your faults.
After Munich, you felt a bit that way. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
You then work out what Buntine has the one stroke easy oar. You found that a great exercise.
Yes. He came to Newington 2 years after I started coaching.
Right.
And I remember the rowing master, John Turnbull at the time, called a meeting of all the coaches and at Sydney Rowing Club, and to break the good news that Bob Buntine had won 4, I think, in a row at King's, was coming to Newington, and that Bob was going to come down and tell us all his secrets. Well, Bob eventually got there and apologised for being late and said, look, I can't stay long, but I've got to pick my wife up. But I can tell you this, that if you can learn to clear 4 feet per stroke at 34 rating, you'll cover 1.5 mile distance in 8 minutes. And that'd probably be good enough for you to win the head of the river. And then he left.
Oh, he left the meeting, right?
He left the meeting. So that was at the end of 75, I guess. And we won then in 76 and 7, following his mantra of focusing on clearing 4 feet at 34 strokes to the minute.
Yeah. Wow.
I should have perhaps added, I mean, most people wouldn't know what clearance is, but as the puddles go past the boat each stroke, that's the distance between the stroke puddle and the two-man's puddle, that you had to sort of let 4 feet go out before the blade went in again, and that's clearance.
Yeah, and you had markings on the boat.
We had a piece of tape on the boat, 4 feet apart on the stern deck, on the canvas, and which served 2 purposes. One, from the coaching boat, when you were beside them, it gave you a good measure what 4 feet looks like in relation to their clearance. And it wasn't a bad thing that before they went on the water, to show them that if they wanted to win the head of the river, they had to get that distance between strokes at ultimately 34 strokes to the minute rating.
If someone's not motivated, can they hide in an 8?
Well, yes, they can, but in latter days when we took to sculling, we had a pretty simple selection process that the top 8 scullers were the first 8. Boat movers picked themselves, and it was self-selecting. The boys picked themselves, whether he was tall, short, or what, but whether I liked him or not didn't matter. He made the crew.
And what year do you bring that in?
Our first year with it was the 87 head of the river.
Oh, that was the first time you do that?
With the sculling, yes.
Do you just... That obviously is a big moment to go, well, that's certainly what's happening.
Well, I mean, after we won in 77, we ran, in the next 9 years, we ran second 6 times. Gets a bit frustrating.
Yeah. What do you think was happening there?
Well, there was a couple of factors in it that... I wasn't a teacher. I was just a volunteer coach, not paid a cent. And I did that for probably 8 years, won a couple, yes, and several seconds. But
it's not quite what you're wanting to do, though, is it?
No, it's not.
So are you learning more here in this time? Your winning edge program starts in the late 70s, is that right?
Yes, I was coaching the first 8. And I had been for 8 years as a volunteer, and the headmaster spoke to me and said, would I be interested in coming on board as a PE teacher, learn on the job, and teach PE and coach rowing. So in third term 1981, I started teaching with the boys in the prep school, with 6th class in prep school.
Right.
And it just so happens that when those boys got to year 12, we won the head of the river. At the time, in 81, I got the cheeky young kid out of year grade 6 who was small, good athlete, cheeky, and I said, now, in 1987, you'll be in year 12. I want you to, and I'd had a little poster made, just 1987, head of the river, GPS champions, Newington. And I said, I want you to give this to all the 6th grade boys who you think might pull you across the line to win the head of the river. Now, 6 out of those boys won the head of the river, and he was the coxswain.
Wow, and he was the coxswain.
It was a bit maybe the same for me. When I went into first year in 1959, we were told that old boy and Olympian, the Olympic coach and coxswain, Tom Chessel, was going to coach the 8 because 1963 was the school centenary, and the old boys thought it'd be nice to win the head of the river in the centenary. So, simple message that if you made the first 8, you were going to win the head of the river, because the old boys thought it was a nice idea and they'd appointed a very good coach.
Right.
So,
is that right? Wow.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
There's something long-term about Michael Morgan's goals, isn't there?
Well, yes. I think it's the little things often that make the difference. Every one in 8 crews at the head of the river, they've all done a lot of work.
Yes.
But not necessarily quality. Think of percentages, a 6-minute boat race, which is roughly the time of the head of the river. Well, a 1% improvement is 3.6 seconds. Now, that's over a boat length. But what makes up 1%? Maybe a lot of little things. And that became part of the program, that attention to detail, yes, diet, rest, recovery, all these things, strength, they're all components and that make up 1%.
Interestingly, as a rower, you're already starting to test out theories and you've got questions about how you're rowing.
Yeah.
If you had a choice between only ever being a rower and only ever coaching, what would you choose?
Well, I mean, perhaps there's a bit of an age-related thing too. I mean, you're only an athlete for a small time in your life, and you can coach well into your 60s or older.
If you could row for a 20-year career or coach, what would you choose?
Probably coach, but...
Probably coach. I thought that was what you would say, because it seems like you were...
I wish a lot of the things I know now I knew as an athlete, and I might have been a better athlete.
It seems like when you were rowing, you were already thinking about coaching.
Going right back to 1967, I was one of... They had 12 for the King's Cup crew, a squad, and 3 of us were left over, and 1 reserve stayed, but the 3 of us left over dropped from the squad. We got Howard Croker, you know the name. He recruited another fellow, Gary Pearce, and we were the 4 rejects that weren't wanted, and we thought we would... we rowed as a coxless 4 to go in the selection race to go to Canada that year, and which we did win the race. And we had no coach. We'd get occasionally someone to come out and look at us for a couple of sessions, but basically we coached and trained ourselves. And time went on. I got picked from that crew, luckily, and put in the 8, and we went to the North American and European Championships. And coming home on the plane, they mentioned that there was a tour to New Zealand in November. Now, we'd all spent 8 weeks overseas, and out of an 8, a 4 and a pair and a sculler that went to Canada, there was only 2 out of the 8, Alf Javel and myself and Alan Grover, the coxswain, put our hand up in the invitation that we would like to go to New Zealand. Well, we came home and recruited a couple of more rowers, Joe Fazio and a young Kim Mackney, who had just joined the club, and not rowing particularly well, but we won selection, and so we're off to New Zealand to represent Australia on a 3-week tour, but we had no coach. Our coach, Phil Kaiser, couldn't travel with us, and when you're away for 3 weeks, you're training and coaching yourself,
you start to become a bit of a coach.
Yes.
Yeah. With the Olympics, they did a study on happiness, and they found that gold medals were happy, bronze were really happy, silver wasn't so happy.
Well, when you get the silver, you've lost.
So it had to do with where you were comparing yourself.
Well, it's better to be in the even numbers than the odd numbers. There's 6 or 8 in a final.
The odd
you
numbers.
go 8th, you're last. If you run second, at least you weren't last. And if you win the bronze, at least you made the podium.
That's right. So they found that the silver medalists weren't so happy. My point is that, was this for that memory for you, was that a bit of a thorn in the side?
Well, it was still an unfulfilled ambition, which still remains unfulfilled as a coach, but it's a bit late now.
Does that drive in you, where does this obsessive hunger to win, where does that come from?
Well, winning's more fun than losing, let's face it.
Yeah. Do you think it's got to do with the gold at the Olympics?
Maybe initially.
Maybe initially.
It's what got me into coaching.
Yes.
But I must admit, when I went into coaching after my rowing and going to the Olympics, 3 years after retiring, coaching the 8, that was pretty good. But I still didn't contemplate it being a career. It did become my job. And again, the same bloke, John Turnbull, who got me to coach at Newington as a volunteer, he became the secretary manager at Sydney Rowing Club. And in 78, he, on behalf, I suppose, the board, and he offered me a job as a professional coach. Yeah. And so 78, I became a professional rowing coach, and that was my career until 81, and I became the Newington PE teacher and coach again. I was also coaching at Newington as a volunteer while I was at Sydney Rowing Club.
Because you win in 76, don't you?
Well, I was coaching Newington, coaching the King's Cup crew.
That's right, yeah.
The Olympic crew then, all in the same season.
All in the same season.
Yeah. And working in the family business for my father.
Right. So, Michael, you're trying to get a boat that's nearly a tonne in weight to peak pace. What's your theory on that?
I say it's a combination of things. I mean, one, you want to have a good boat.
Yeah.
And that was another track I went down.
Yes.
Boat building.
I want to get... Oh, was it? That was a track you went down. Boat building.
Yeah, for a while. And the 1%ers, yes, equipment, attention to detail, but never forget getting the right athletes is recruitment, and getting the right athletes is keys to it all. Well, I mean, there's a lot to learn, and I did have some very good mentors over the years.
Yep.
I mean, Rusty Robinson, gold medalist 72, bronze in the 8, 76, and he came to New South Wales to Des Moines Rowing Club initially, and then did some work at stint at Sydney Grammar, where he won the Head of the River in 78.
Yep.
But he was a great mentor of mine, apart from the previous coaches. But there have been a lot of mentors in there. I was pretty good attendee at seminars, and a fella, Tor Nielsen, who was Norwegian, who then went to Italy and coached, and I learnt a lot of lessons, and part of my training program was based on his. The East Germans, Harold Yarling came here from East Germany, a dual Olympic champion, and he started coaching here in '91, and at that time I was back doing some coaching at Sydney Rowing Club, as well as coaching Newington. And East Germany, their training program, I think probably, or training programs, a lot of criticism of them over drugs, etc. But leave that out. Their sports medicine and research and training modules was it probably changed the world in certainly rowing very much.
Changed the world, yeah. Do you think with the Berlin Wall coming down, do you think there's any relation to coaching information coming out of the country?
Oh,
there?
absolutely. I mean, the East Germans went around the world almost like disciples, spreading the word. I mean,
did they?
The British coach who won the gold medal at the Sydney Olympics, he's former East German.
Right.
Theo Kerner, who was the head of the East German rowing program, he came out and he did work for the Australian Institute of Sport for a while. And story with that, there was a seminar, coaches seminar at the AIS, and they had, I think, 3 or 4 speakers, and that we were broken up into workshops and we were to rotate around these 4 speakers. Well, Muggins here decided that he was only going to listen to Theo Kerner, and which I heard him give 4 different presentations, or 4 presentations, and then the penny dropped that not every one of them was the same. And finally on the last day, they had a summing up of the various speakers, and he made the point of I always keep 10% for myself.
Yes.
And my thinking was, well, I was the only one that maybe got that 10% because he wasn't telling them all everything.
Right.
When he went around, and as he went to each one, he'd leave something out. I don't know whether deliberate or not.
Well, just keep people guessing, is that it, or what?
Well, yes, well, keep people guessing, and little things that I'm sure that we did at Newington that not many people outside of school knew much about.
You seemed quite happy. You're gathering a lot of valuable information, and you seem to be quite happy to give out the recipe, so to speak.
Well, maybe I was keeping 10% to myself.
You were, right. Yeah, okay. No, that's fair. But what's interesting also is that if you do give out the recipe to, say you're doing a chicken sandwiches to 10 different chefs, each sandwich is going to be different, right?
That's true, but there is also the element that I know with coaches that I've been involved with, I'll put it that way, and trying to get them to do everything that I wanted them to do.
Right.
No. Yeah, I mean, the Newington boys, the strength program we had, for instance, which I got basically, or the testing from it, our testing was East German based.
Yeah.
That, and I was doing that from 87, or probably 87. We started the same year we started sculling. We also started a new weights program.
Right.
And which trying to, in latter years, after I left the college and I went back and helped out, but trying to get them to test the boys was an impossible task.
Oh, what year? When's this?
Past 07.
Oh, okay. They weren't testing the boys?
No, not testing what I wanted them to test.
Why was that?
As I was told, and it's true, that there's lots of different ways to skin a cat.
Yes.
And all I knew that this what the tests that the East Germans used to do,
yes.
And I did, and I had a pretty good record doing those tests. But why no one would follow that? Search me.
Wow.
They like to have their own input.
Right. Right.
It's very nice. We're very glad for your help and everything, but yeah, I've got some things that I think are pretty good too, so you don't mind if I do those, and they would.
Wow, right. That document, that Winning Edge document, when I read it, Michael, it was
that was the 98 one I think I gave you. But
right. It changed a lot?
Bear in mind, every year, the core part would stay the same, and the first part was what the goal was, the speed we need to achieve.
Yeah.
To achieve our goal, win the head of the river, this was the speed we had to achieve.
Yeah.
And that varied over the years. I mean, one we went from a mile and a half to 2,000 metres, 2,400 metres to 2,000 metres.
Yes.
So there was that difference.
There was a number there, 18.9 FPS or something. What?
That's feet per second. Back to when it was 4 feet at 34. Well, of course, we went metric and other things happened. Technology improved, and it was wonderful to be able to send the crew out to race. And when they came in, I could download their speed, average speed and rate for every 100 metres of the course. And I used to love to graph that.
Wow.
And
well, you'd see differences in each 100 metres, yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
That strength program, with schoolboys, do you think getting them stronger, that's one of the bigger areas that you can create a difference, yeah? Is that right?
Yes, it is. I mean, I do think while it's the schoolboy times have really not got any quicker than they were 97, 98, when Newington last won. And I do suspect that training today, I mean, an elite athlete probably does 2 to 3 times more training than I ever did as a rower. And the people that come from rowing and then go into coaching, that's what they know. And so their weights training, for instance, would be endurance training. Now, endurance weight training might take you an hour and a half to do. The strength program used to take maybe 30 minutes. Now, a schoolboy today has no more time to train than he probably did 25, 30 years ago.
Right.
And where the elite athletes, they're just about full-time athletes, and where...
That's the enemy of a coach. You wrote down. Yeah, is that time? It was fascinating that you talking about minutes. You've got your training sessions down to the minute.
If you spend 5 minutes at either end of the session, mucking around at the getting in, doing up your shoes and everything, that can add up through the season to in a year 10-8 to 100 kilometres. Now. That's probably 10% of their training.
The Bob Buntine partnership.
Yeah.
How does that? You go to him with a plan. Is that right?
Look, there was first off the principle of, even though we changed from 4 feet at 34 to metric and etc., but it was still the same principle.
Yes.
Of what we were trying to achieve. But, so that was, Bob used to come down twice a week. He would take the second session on Saturday, and while I would then go and coach the Year 7 boys. And on a Thursday, he would take them. And again, I would coach Year 7 boys. So I was teaching Year 7. I was choosing the boys out of Year 7 to come rowing. I was teaching them the basics of rowing that I wanted, and waiting then for them to grow older. But, so it was a good combination to let us do that, and I had confidence. Sometimes, I would go out with him, and I would invariably then listen. And he had a different approach, but it was a good approach and one I was very happy working with. And
Michael, out of 31 years that you coached, only one of those years you didn't have an assistant.
For the 8 years I coached as a volunteer, I wasn't at school. I couldn't supervise the out-of-the-boat training.
Right.
I was also coaching at Sydney. I was working in a business, and so I needed someone to cover for me when I wasn't there.
I see. And you got used to that dynamic.
Well, it also, with the people that I worked with, who were nearly always teachers, I'd wear them out, and they'd go back and coaching junior year 10-8s or whatever. So it was a way of spreading the word.
You'd wear them out.
And the program.
You'd wear them out. So you asked a bit from people, Michael.
Sure.
Yeah. One thing about you is that you were able to get people to. They had to buy in. They had to buy into the exercise.
Yeah.
They? They've got to want to do it, right?
Sure.
Yeah. And you were good. You were good at doing that, don't you think? At planting the seed and saying this is what can be achieved.
Well, yes. Yeah. Plant the seed in the young boy's mind.
Yeah. From the Winning Edge program, I see strength, superior strength, and mental preparation being the base of that program. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, part of. Yeah. I mean, the mental part, I suppose 2 parts. Yes, I did get them to read, or encourage them to read, the senior boys, not all of them. One of the things in the mental part that came with Bob Buntine is that thing you may have heard of, dry swinging.
Yes.
Where in term 1, every lunch hour, the first and second 8 would, we used to use the rifle range at Newington.
Every lunch hour?
Every lunch hour in term 1.
In term 1.
And we had 8 boxes that with a slope on one side and a foot strap for them to hook their feet in to the person in front of them.
Yeah.
And a wooden oar handle that they would swing with, and we would, for 8 minutes, we would go through. Bob used to mostly run it, except if he couldn't be there, because he was deputy head.
Yes.
If he couldn't be there, but I would do it, but it was mostly Bob, and we would, for 8 minutes of swing on these boxes, and go through the race plan. So by the time they came to the head of the river, they'd rode the race many, many times.
Yeah. In 91, there was a cable break at the start of the race.
Yeah.
And they had another 15 minutes before the race would start, but they were so relaxed. They were sort of, playing around a little bit, whereas the other crews were quite tense and nervous and that sort of thing. That's quite revealing about their mental preparation, I think.
Well, could be.
Could be. The idea is that they're going out to perform something that they've done many times before.
Likewise, I mean, when they would be in camp, we used to stay in every Friday night at the boat shed in term 1, including me. I'd sleep on the floor in the coach's room.
Is that right?
And but when they'd go to bed, when lights went out, we would have 8 minutes. In latter years, it became 6 minutes, and the coxswain would go through the race with them. Call it each half minute and let them know where they were, and they'd be mentally rowing the race.
Yeah.
Every night they were in camp. Mental preparation was a big part, yes.
It was a big part.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. With that 91 crew, the beginning of the season, there was a story where you have a meeting at the shed and say, okay, boys, what do you want to do? And one of the boys goes, oh, well, win the head of the river, sir, you know. And then you say, well, what else do you want to do? And they say, well, maybe the state title, you know. And so on and so forth, through to the national title, through to the international title. And fascinatingly, they do the exact time at when they race in Queensland to what they'd set 6 months earlier.
Yep.
Which is absolutely phenomenal.
Yep.
You're saying that, look, life's tough. It might as well start now. That's one of your quotes.
I don't know that I said that every year, but I'm sure I've said it somewhere.
Said it somewhere along the line.
Life's pretty tough when you leave school. You may as well get used to it now. Rowing's a great opportunity. I mean, it's an old saying of mine too. If all you ever get out of a boat race is a win at the head of the river, you haven't got much.
Sorry, what was that?
If all you ever get out of a boat race is out of rowing is a win at the head of the river, winning a boat race, you haven't got much, because there are a lot of other lessons that come from rowing.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's right. Of course. Talk to me about the ninth man.
That's very simple. I had a lot of mentors. My first year coaching, the fellow that had coached the 8, Lance Robinson, in 67 that I went away with in the Australian team. When I started coaching, he used to come out with me regularly, and he said one day, don't forget the ninth man. And by the ninth man, he was referring to the boat, that you've got to let the boat do its work. And that's another word for the clearance, that you've got to let the boat run and not stop the run of the boat, but you've got to run the boat to get that. And so it's even from looking at the crews from the outside. Bob Buntine, he used to focus on those 2 bits of tape, the 4 feet and the clearance, and others might look at the bow, but you've got to think about the boat.
In order to get that run, so do you think it's... Because I noticed in that Winning Edge program that the 1990 crew was noted about the amount over their body weight that they were able to pull.
Yes.
So the standard was 20 pounds above body weight.
Yes.
The 1990 crew could do 35 plus as an average. Okay.
No, a maximum, that's for one lift.
One lift, I see.
But the average is what the 8 of them in the crew averaged above their body weight.
Right, above their body weight. Right.
Yeah.
So clearly that strength is... Don't you think that strength is setting them up to be able to get that clearance rate?
That all helps, contributes, yes.
It all helps, yeah. What else helps? Because there's something about the Newington slide that's going on from about 87. There's something you're doing on that slide, I think, that is different to other people, to other crews.
Well, taking the time to come off the back to finish the stroke.
Taking the time.
Not stopping at the front.
So quick hands away and slow into the front is not what you're about, Michael.
No.
Is that right? No.
Correct.
Yeah. So can you let me know...
Well, the boat is running its slowest before the catch. Why would you want to stop there? Also, the trim on the boat, why would you want to stop with all the weight in the back of the boat?
Right. So you're taking a bit of time around the back there. That's what you're doing. You're getting that clearance. You're letting the boat run at that stage in the stroke.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Once you're slow off the back, what are you doing then? You're not speeding up at any stage, or
certainly not slowing down at the front.
Certainly not slowing down at the front.
No.
If you're going to slow down somewhere, it's not there.
No.
Yeah. Because you say that you can learn to row on the back of a matchbox.
Yes, that's...
But you can easily complicate it. If you know what you're doing, it's fairly simple, Michael.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Well, I think sometimes it gets complicated. There are books on how to row, but I remember, I think you've probably read somewhere, former headmaster at Newington, David Mulford, when I happened to be now was out of school, coaching, and I'm on the board at Newington, and he came in one day and he said, look, I hope you don't mind, but my previous school, the chairman there used to ask me to write my headmaster's reports on one page of A4. And I thought, well, that's a pretty good idea. So I then set out to write how to row on a sheet of A4. And
did it?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's not that complicated.
But you've got to know what you're doing, though, to be able to get the right part that's simple. Don't you? Would you agree? I mean, is that right?
Well, it still comes back to the simple thing, like 4 feet clearance at whatever the rate is.
Yes.
If you're coming down the track at 40 all the way, you've still got to have a set clearance.
You've still got to have a set.
One of the realities is that at the head of the river, for instance, the crew that wins probably takes less strokes than everybody else.
So this is interesting, yeah. So you're saying in a 6-minute race, your blade is out of the water for 4 minutes.
Yes.
And this is what people neglect.
Yeah.
So with Newington, you've got to be really strong in order to be able to earn that lower rate. Is that true?
Well, that's true, yes.
Yeah. So talk to me about, at the start of the race, Michael, everyone's got the same fuel tank. But if you've got a superior strength from your Winning Edge program and you've got that capacity to have that the way you're doing your stroke, when you get rowing and racing, if your stroke rate's a little bit down but you're keeping with the field, your lactic acid's going to be delayed a little bit. Everyone gets lactic acid, but it's going to be a little bit delayed to the other crews. Would that be right?
Possibly, but one of the coming back to the East Germans.
Yep.
That I remember at the 1970 World Championships, they had a van parked at about the 1,000 metres with henchmen in it, and they were counting the strokes that each crew was taking because this is during the heats and the qualifying rounds, and they wanted to know who the dangers were, and the crews with the least number of strokes over they were counting the strokes for the 2,000 metres.
Wow.
And the crews that had the lowest stroke count for the distance were the ones to watch. And but there's another statistic too, that in World Championships and head of the rivers, that 9 times out of 10 the race winner leads at 500 metres gone.
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. So why would you want to start slow? So even though...
why would you want to start slow?
I can tell you with Bob Buntine, working with him, there would be start drills done right through the season, even if the beginning of the season, that when we would turn around at Silverwater or wherever it was, they would do a start drill, and the start was practiced hundreds. They may not have been flat out and full on racing,
half pressure starts,
but in a variety of things, the different start drills. We had various start drills that we would do at certain times of the year, and but start drills were always important, and that 9 times out of 10 is
that 9 times.
And if you're not in front, well, you want to be putting a great deal of pressure on whoever is in front.
Right. You want to be winning at the 500 is what you're saying.
Well,
if you can possibly do anything about it.
Yes.
Yeah. You'd like to be there. Yeah. What do you have different strategies for your crews if they're not in that position?
Oh, well, we did have a race plan.
You did have a race plan?
Yes.
Yeah.
But,
You're joking, you're laughing about that.
well,
Try to be first at the 500.
no. It was good if we were, and invariably we were, but somehow or other, 800 metres seemed a very important part of the race.
Oh, right.
And a lot of crews
Really? How do you work
start to drop their speed. You could graph countless crews and you will see that they drop down, and so I guess I used to think that if we could hold our start, what is the start? Maybe the start's 800, but from 800 metres to try and hold our speed there while other crews were tailing off was a good move.
That's interesting. Hold your speed there.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
I mean, even if the old ergometer tests we used to do, that they used to record every half minute, I guess, but you could almost, and how many revolutions the old flywheel used to do, that you'd get a similar graph out of it, that about 800 metres, so many of them that would tail off.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was part of.
Do you think that's a lactic acid thing that's happening?
Well, yes, their energy systems are changing over, yes.
Energy systems are changing.
Yeah.
Right, wow. Were you ever doing a piece on the Parramatta River and you were shocked by what times they were doing, the splits they were doing?
Look, one of our Tuesday workout in term 1, we used to do either 40 on, 20 off, 2 times 8, or 30 on, 20 off, 2 times 10, or once a season, 20 racing, 5 strokes at light, times 40. And these are workouts I got from mentioned Tor Nielsen.
Right. This is interval type of things, is it?
Instead of 500, we rarely did 500 metre pieces.
Right.
But we, and if you add that up, it's over 600 racing strokes. And these we were trying to do at our race rate.
Yeah.
Which might be, in latter days, might have been 37, 38.
In the early 90s, were you rating a bit lower?
No, we'd have had by term 1, we'd have had the rate up.
You wouldn't be in the low 30s, is that what you're saying?
No. Well, put it this way, you mentioned the 90 crew.
Yes.
Who were an outstanding crew.
Yeah.
And we came back at the end of the Christmas holidays. We had a week's rowing camp, and the crew was selected the first day of camp, and then another week or so in camp, and then we had the New South Wales Championships.
Yeah.
And they did, I think, a 5:48 for 2000, and the only crew that beat them was the Institute of Sport from Canberra, the AIS.
Yeah.
And they were as fast then as they were 6 weeks later.
Right.
And,
that's phenomenal.
Yeah, they were pretty good crew.
Pretty good crew. Easy on the slide. Is that right? Was that your mentality towards the recovery?
Yeah, going back to the Victorian rowing, I went down. I was in the 8, trained down there in 1970 rowing.
Yes.
And I learnt the most popular Victorian exercise was what they call every stroke an easy oar. I mean, in those days, you used to easy oar at the back and strike your hands away, and you'd easy oar, and then the coxswain would say row. And you could do that for kilometre after kilometre, rowing, a fair bit of pressure in the water.
Right.
But taking the time, and then under Bob Buntine, he was an ex-Victorian and he loved it, and
because that alleviated building bad habits, you were saying.
Yeah.
It's good for that.
To sit back and watch the clearance go out. So then Bob changed it around where they would easy oar, and the boys would count to 5 or 6, whatever it was.
Yep.
And then row, and they would do it, and then he might bring it down to 1 to 4, and then 1 to 3. So easy oar, strike the hands away, sit there and count to 3, and then swing forward and come out and take the stroke. And that was getting pretty closer to the rhythm that we wanted.
Right. I do have to ask about the 100-metre sprints, Michael. It's a different level of fitness. And how did you do the 100
Well, it's totally anaerobic.
It's totally anaerobic.
And the first part of the race is anaerobic.
Right.
Bear in mind, as I said, Rusty Robinson came to Australia in after the Montreal Olympics, and that was, and he brought that with him. And
he brought that with him?
With him, yes.
So you get it from Rusty Robinson?
I get it from Rusty Robinson.
Yeah.
So we would do 20 100-metre sprints, absolutely flat out, with a 10-second interval in between. And that just also happens to be 2,000 metres.
Yeah.
And apart from wonderful anaerobic training for the first part of the race.
Anaerobic training for the first part of the race.
The reality was that Rusty's crews, both his Munich 8 gold medalists, they were length clear at 500, and his 4 that won in Mexico, 68, likewise a length ahead at 500 metres. So what part that contributed to it?
Do you think that gave you an edge, Michael?
Well, it was part of.
Part of, yeah. But
well,
it was a good part, though.
Well, it was something we did.
It was something
I don't know whether I wasn't thinking of it as an edge, but it was something that we'd only do it in term 1, and we would do it 3 mornings before school on the oval at school.
Right, 3 mornings a week.
3 mornings a week, yeah, so only in racing season.
Only in racing, yeah. But incredible workout though, right?
Yeah. 1973, so the year after Montreal, Sydney Rowing Club was going to Henley, and to raise money, I was captain of Sydney Rowing Club at the time, and I got Rusty to come over and speak at a fundraising dinner for us, and so I looked after him. He came for 3 nights, and I hosted him, and Rusty, I've got to say, did like a drink, and the last night I was always, what I wanted to know was why his cruise was so fast over the first 500 metres.
Right.
That was their trademark.
Right.
And so all this time with him and trying to pick his brains, and finally he said, it's all in one stroke. And I thought, beauty, I've got this, I'll go home now.
Yeah.
And I woke up the next day thinking, all in one stroke, which stroke? And 240 in a race. And then I thought, my assumption was, well, if I could just coach the boys to learn to row one perfect stroke, and that was the goal, and then multiply that 240 times, that might be the trick. So I learned a lot from Rusty.
You learn a lot from Rusty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you describe one of your strokes? Or is it too difficult?
Yeah, it's too difficult.
Is it, really?
No.
So from the catch, how does it go?
Well, just remember the most efficient part of the stroke is when the oar is at a right angle to the boat.
Yes.
And probably about 30 degrees or 20 degrees either side of that
Right.
middle 40 degrees, and that area there, I mean, you've got...
That's your sweet spot for forward motion, yeah?
You've got the resources you have to lever the oar. You've got arms, body and legs, and you want to be swinging your body and using your arms through that part of the stroke.
You want to be emphasising hitting that part of the stroke. Yeah, that's interesting.
And in latter years, particularly 97, 98, the new rowing machine came on the scene, the Row Perfect machine, which we bought. And
did you put much emphasis on ergometers?
well, I did on these.
Did you?
And, but this was in latter years.
Right.
I thought 97, 98, for instance, it was our winning edge. That
you use those machines?
Yes.
Wow.
That because what you could do is that it had a screen in front of the rower, and it would graph their power output through the stroke.
Oh, wow.
And you could see how that was being applied.
Really?
Particularly that middle part of the stroke and the arc.
Wow.
And it gave you something to model on.
That's interesting.
And I thought they were terrific. And I could print them off. Each athlete, I could print off his power curve.
Wow.
And you could see how it was being applied.
Would some of the curves, they wouldn't be doing it in the right spot sometimes?
we used to I'd get to the boat shed early on a Friday, and the nights the boys would stay in, and they'd come in from activities at school, whether it was cadets or whatever, and they'd dribble into the boat shed and they would go on the Row Perfect with me, and we would focus on their graph.
Right.
And which was and the length of their stroke.
So just being a bit basic with that,
Yeah.
you want to be sort of building into how much pressure you're putting into the stroke, in a way, right?
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
The measurement that this was giving us, it gave us the length of stroke. Now, the length of stroke was not where you, say, put the oar in or pull it out. Mm-hmm. The length of stroke is when the pressure on the face of the blade is increasing the speed of the boat.
Yeah.
So you can come forward and just drop the blade in and pick it up at the finish let go, and you catch it at the end of the stroke.
Yeah.
But it's doing nothing for the speed.
Yeah.
It's the acceleration, and so stroke length I in the end thought of as accelerated stroke length, the part from where you started accelerating the boat.
Yes.
And the same at the end of the stroke, that when the blades get in the water, as you're aware, there's a cavity, or perhaps you're aware, a cavity behind the blade. Now, if you can maintain that cavity by accelerating the finish, that when you come to release, you haven't got that drag. Now, it is drag that slows the boat down. And this comes back to, again, the run of the boat, that when the boat sinks down into the water, you get more drag, you got more wetted surface area, and the more the wetted surface area, the slower the boat goes. And likewise, the back of an oar, I don't know how many square centimetres it is, but it's a lot. If you can maintain a cavity to the end of the stroke and then quickly release before that, you don't get the drag on the back of the oar, or the friction on the back of the oar. So that's another aspect too.
So if the middle of the stroke is where the power is being applied to go forward, why is the length so big? Is that increasing the arc? If you've got a longer stroke, have you got a bigger part of that sweet spot?
Simple maths, speed equals length by power, by rate.
Right.
Now, length, let's think accelerated length, not just where you drop the ore in and take it out.
Right.
I mean, you can reach right around and put an oar in and it won't make the boat go.
Right.
So accelerated length and power, well, yes, the stroke begins with the feet. The first application of power is the feet and the legs, and that's why vertical jump was a very good test.
Right.
That no one else seems to think is a good test.
Right.
But the East Germans thought vertical jump is a very good test because it gives you a measure of explosive power.
Right.
So, again, length times power times rate.
Yeah.
And,
wow.
Getting a bit technical.
I'm trying to stay with you. So 1990, when the men were men and the schoolboys were beating them, wasn't it? That state title, because they were picking the King's Cup crew out of that Mossman and that Sydney crew that you beat.
Yeah.
At Penrith.
Correct.
That must have been satisfying for you.
Well, I think it certainly annoyed some of the club rowers. And it was probably that's why. That and the next year is why, or after that year, I went back to, there was interest in Sydney Rowing Club and me coaching there, and I went there with a mate from Newington, one of my old coaches, Stuart Derwin, and we coached as well as me coaching Newington, I coached the club crew, and that's when Harold Yarling and I started working with him because he was the state coaching director.
Oh, so that did happen. Okay, that did happen there.
Yeah.
Okay. What did you think you learnt from Harold Yarling?
Well, we learnt all the East German training systems.
Yeah.
Which was, as I say, it probably improved certainly what I was doing aerobically with the boys. Gave it a more scientific base. That helped.
And you always wanted to have the best equipment, obviously.
Sure.
Yeah. Why Vespoli?
Why Vespoli? Let me think. 88 was the Seoul Olympics, and this friend, Stuart Derwin, and another ex-Sydney guy and boat builder, Alan Phillips. We were talking on another colleague, parent, Chris Smith's father, Neil Smith. We used to talk a lot, I suppose, and we came the question, why aren't we building these carbon boats here? And we decided to send Alan Phillips over to the Seoul Olympics on the basis that the Olympics are always the latest supermarket of all the latest technology and the latest boats. And so we paid for him to go over there and give us a report, and he came back and he said, look, I think actually Vespoli is the one that you should look at. And we found out that their design, they had built a 1/3 scale model and did all the tank testing on it for as like they did with Australia too in Holland. And
they did all the tank testing.
We ended up buying a boat and fully importing it, and through another contact, I ran into an ex-Newington boy at the bar at Sydney Rowing Club who used to sell Kevlar, which was the product, one of the cloths, the materials that they were putting in these boats, and said to him, we've got this boat coming, is there anyone here in Sydney that could copy this? And he said, oh yes, there is. There's a fella in Brookvale, and who makes 18 and 14 foot skiffs.
Right.
So I went down with Stuart Derwin and saw him, and we ended up taking the boat to him, and he took a
Mould.
mould off it, and we ultimately, Newington bought the 8,
Wow.
the Vespoli 8, which the mould had been taken off, and then latter years the Osrotec, which was became the name of the boat builders, Australian Rowing Technology.
Yes.
And we started making 8s, but we used 90 was the first head of the river we used it.
Can I ask you, Michael, over the 2,000 metres, what sort of time difference do you think it was giving you?
Look, I
Do you know?
I don't know that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I
You don't know what time they were doing in a wooden boat versus the new Vespoli?
No.
Yeah.
No.
They were still quick in the wooden boat.
Yeah, we won in '89, and it was the last wooden boat to win the head of the river.
Right.
And they won by pretty clear margin.
Yes.
They had a big win.
Did
And,
they? Yeah, that was you. That was you, yeah. What time did they do it in?
Well, it was a mile and a half. I can't recall the time,
You can't
to be
recall.
honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it certainly was better than 8 minutes. They were getting down to heading towards 7.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah, okay. And then 90, you don't recall. Yeah, you don't know the time they did. Because
No.
the difference between the boat.
Yeah, no, I don't recall.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's good. Trust in a boat's important. Is that why you have a tight-knit group? Is that trust?
Well, as I say, a team is only as strong as its weakest link,
Yeah.
or as a chain is,
Yeah,
and you don't want any weak links.
that's a true statement. For Michael, you believe that?
Mm-hmm. That's
Great.
why we had such a hard-nosed selection system. We used to race off every 2 weeks, and
Every 2 weeks?
every 2 weeks in term 4, and whoever was the top 8 scullers became the first 8, and
So you're match racing consistently, yeah?
all the time.
All the time.
Yeah,
There's a race fitness, do you think, versus a
they become race hardened.
race
Yes.
hardened?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
Seasoned,
tough competitors.
tough competitors.
Yeah.
Race hardened, yeah.
Even 97 was a bit of a funny year for us. We hadn't won a race,
Right,
not a race.
right.
And we kept racing them off every 2 weeks until finally about 10 days before the head of the river. And we finally, or the week before, picked the crew, and there were people going in, people coming out, and then they came out and won the head of the river. And for most of the boys, a lot of the boys in the crew, it was the first race they'd ever won, and it was the only race we won in the season.
Wow.
But they were just, in the end, became very tough and made up for any other qualities they didn't have.
They became very tough in the end.
We'd race on a Friday night.
Right, okay. Oh, would you? Every 2 weeks on a Friday
Yeah.
night? Oh, wow. Wow. And gee, no stone unturned. This rhythm beat tempo, what's that? What is that all about?
Well, I think where I used it, that again, it just comes to the time out of the water,
Right.
And that is the rhythm.
Yeah, rhythm. So rhythm helps you to be more efficient.
It lets the boat work.
It lets the boat work. The rhythm is letting the boat work.
It's also, I mean, you obviously, for only ever having the oars in the water for 2 minutes, you get very tired at the end of the race, I've noticed, and for having 4 minutes with the oars out of the water. So it has got to be a recovery period. Yeah, rowing is a combination of work and rest.
Yeah.
But the recovery is very important.
It's very important. Yeah, it's very important. I think if you had to say, for me, I think it was your superior strength and your superior recovery that I think that made into Newington boats. That's just my...
Well, they're big contributors.
Yeah,
That's
big
for sure.
contributors.
And, good athletes.
And good athletes, yeah. Would you say they were the bigger contributors, or you think it's a whole bunch of things?
Well, look, it's a bit like this, that
you can't sort of nail it down.
When I won in 76 and 7, the rowing master was the school sergeant, and he used to be, and also a football coach, rowing coach, and he would be picking the talent to come to the boat shed for me. And then he left school, and I had no one doing that, and that's where we ran, as I said, second 6 times in 9 years. But then, after I went on staff and teaching everyone in Year 7 and coaching Year 7, the under-13s and 12s rugby, I was also
recruiting.
Identifying talent.
Identifying talent.
And
you think those seconds in the 80s was to do with the athletes that you had?
Well, a lot of factors perhaps, but that's certainly one of them, is to get the best boys in the program.
That's one of them, yeah.
And,
wow. In 93 you had a lot of depth in your shed.
Yeah.
But I remember my father saying, I don't understand, Newington, they're nowhere in the 4s, but when they get to the 8s, they're untouchable around that time, and probably for a lot of the times. But do you wish you had more depth?
It'd be nice. Would have been nice. I mean, God, it didn't matter how many times I'd win. I'd still have parents complaining, why can't we be more like Shaw?
Winning the whole pennant sort of scenario.
That's right. Well, I thought Newington was never going to do that for a couple of reasons. I mean, like Shaw School, Riverview, they draw out of a very close circle of the North Shore line for Shaw, Lane Cove and everything for Riverview, much the same as Riverview, as Shaw. Yep. But a Newington boy, when I went there, could live from Cronulla to Palm Beach to the Blue Mountains. Yeah. And rowing was not going to suit them all. Right. So we were never going to, I thought, draw from as big a pool of athletes through travel, etc. But it was more important, I felt, to get the right people, and and why also we had, we had a number of Year 10s win the Head of the River.
A number of years, at Newington.
At Newington.
Yep.
And
Stephen Humphrey was one of them.
Oh, Stephen Humphrey, yes. Ben Nelson, Matt Long, Rhett Webster. Wow. A lot of those boys won in Year 10.
Really?
Mind you, they had to put up with me for 3 years, so they deserved a medal.
Wow, yeah, because they were winning the sculls.
Well, to get a scull, you had to be allocated a scull first, and I did that purely off the ergometer. If you could be in the top 16 ergs, you got a sculling boat. Right. And the only variation of that might have been if someone who looked like a good athlete but had only just joined the school or joined the program, because we had a number of boys win the Head of the River in 1 year rowing, and I would take them into the sculling program, and we'd have. I had other coaches that would put time into them to try and get them up to speed quickly, and where ultimately it still came down to whoever were the top 8 scullers.
Yeah, yeah.
So we had quality, but not necessarily quantity.
Right. In the interest of sportsmanship, Michael, did you ever engage in the mind games?
Gamesmanship, no. I mean, one of the things the regattas, we had target regattas when they were at Penrith, it was generally a target regatta.
Was it? Yeah.
But if it was a Sydney regatta...
You didn't like the Gold Cup dogleg, for example?
Well, we wouldn't let it get in the way of the training, so we might row to Silverwater and then arrive at the start and row the heat.
Right.
I don't know that maybe on one occasion even, because we did a lot of alternate sides where we might row up the river on one side of the boat and come back on the other.
Right.
That was it. So a Newington boy could row both sides and scull in those days.
Right.
And but sometimes, quite often, we might in club regattas race very tired.
Right. Oh, you might race tired. Okay.
That wasn't gamesmanship. It was just
how
the
you
way
rode.
it was.
Right. Did Robert Yarling ever pull an erg under 8 minutes in jeans?
No, I don't think in jeans.
That was a rumour that got out. Did he do a sub 8 minutes though? Is that what you're getting at?
Look,
there was a rumour that's what got out. Yeah.
He did do a very good erg.
He did do a very good erg.
Yeah. Before he came to the school.
Before he came to the school, yeah.
Came in and had a look around, and as you do, while he was there, because I was working with his father, I put him on the erg and gave him a 2,400 metre erg. And I think, yes, he probably broke 8 minutes. But,
really?
So he did do a very good erg.
He did do a very good erg. Yeah. So that part of it's true. The genes might
to some degree, yes.
The genes might be the myth.
Yes, bit of a myth.
Was there any other myths, Michael? There seem to be a few that get out. What's interesting is the culture you build when you're winning like you are.
Yeah.
People search for answers, and a few rumours and myths do seem to come about. Were there any others that...
No, not that I know of.
Not that you know of? No, fair enough. So if it's a target regatta, the Penrith ones... how would you be? Yeah, you would treat that a little bit more differently.
Yeah, we'd taper off a little bit, or an easier week. We'd worked on cycles. Usually a 2-week cycle. The first week would be very hard, and the second week we might drop a weight session or something, and do. A lighter, like on a Tuesday, whereas I was saying we would do 40 on, 20 off.
Yeah.
2 lots of 8. Well, we might only do half that.
Yeah. Can we 40? So you'd go 40 racing.
Yes, 20 strokes at light.
20 light.
And then do that 8 times.
Wow. Times 8. 40,
so it's 640 racing strokes.
640 racing, yeah.
At race pace.
Yeah, race pace, yeah.
So even though we...
So how long would that'd take you 25, 30 minutes or something, yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a hard workout.
Yep.
That's the seasoning. This is Michael Morgan's seasoning, yeah?
Yep.
Race seasoning. Mm-hmm. I just find it fascinating.
Once a week.
Once a week, yeah. Mm-hmm. So in the beginning of the season, while we're talking about this, Michael, how do you creating a base, and what happens? You talk about that base in your program. How do you produce that, and what happens if you don't have a base?
Well, didn't they once say miles make champions?
In the start of the season, you want to be doing nice long pieces.
Yes.
Yeah, and why is that again?
Oh
yeah.
Well,
you are building a base.
Building an aerobic base.
Yep. Can you measure that? How do you know if someone's got a base or they don't?
Oh well, you can measure it, but no, we weren't measuring it. But
did you like the head of the Parramatta race, the 5 one?
Yeah.
You might have been guilty of overcoaching. What do you mean by that?
Look, I think sometimes coaches talk too much. And you've got to let... that was one of the lessons I learned from Bob Buntine. And sometimes the occasions I would go out with him and we'd both be in the boat and I would film and while he drove and coached. But I'd be looking and I think, God, why doesn't he say something? And there'd be these long pauses. And then by some miracle, they'd take a good stroke and he would say, that was a good one. And, then they've got something to build on. But some coaches just talk, where I think you've got to let the rowers think.
Yeah, and what was that saying? I'll shut up in a minute so you can concentrate on what I'm saying.
Yes, that's right.
That's from your notes. That's what you're saying over coaching. Sometimes you just got to let them go. Yeah?
Yes, plenty of coxswains have been guilty of saying too much too. And,
saying too much.
So,
would you? What was a good coxswain for you? Did you put in much into helping him be a good coxswain?
Yes. They become almost an assistant coach. No, I think you've got to spend time with the coxswain. Yes. Very important.
Would you ever get some criticism that you worked the boys too hard and that there'd be burnout? But your guys they stayed around, Michael, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. So that wasn't a fair criticism?
Well, it was... no, I don't think so. I mean, the program developed over time, and recovery, rest, they're all important things. I mean, it's like heart rates. It comes to mind now that I used to ask them to take their pulse every morning.
Did you?
And
would that indicate health?
My boys also kept diaries, and some of them detailed diaries, and I would help them with what I wanted them. And one of the things to put in their diary was their waking heart rate, and if suddenly the heart rate was up, it might be an indicator that they're not well, and something that so it was
they're
just
not well, yeah,
or they haven't recovered. So.
Because it's quite extraordinary that you have a program that's so refined by 87 that you can nominate that if the boys buy in, if you do this, if you follow my program, you will win the head of the river. And you would do that.
More or less, yeah.
That's quite extraordinary. Yeah. If they put in the effort, if they do this, then this is the result.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was, in a sense, what I was doing, like that program. It's not a program. It's an indicator.
Winning system. It's a winning mechanism.
Yeah. If you want to do 540, how are you going to get there?
Yes.
What? Yeah, you need good diet. You
Yes.
need to be mentally prepared. You need to be strong. You need to this. I mean, they're all ingredients that you must have, and each one of those is important. So we would try and focus on them all. As I said, coming back to the 1% improvement, if you're a length behind, how can you be 1% quicker?
So with that body weight testing, that was a one-off thing. Your weights, they would be designed around the rowing stroke, I imagine, Michael?
Oh, it's just bench pull.
Bench pull.
Leg press.
Leg press.
And bench press. They were the only three.
So why is
plus just some core work for back and...
core work, yeah. Why is bench press important for a rower? Because you're not exactly... There's not a lot of weight pushing away.
Yes, I forget now.
There's a reason though, right?
Well...
Because you get tired, I suppose, so you want to be strong enough to get it all, to have control around that area.
Yeah.
Yeah. You forget now, yeah. But there was a reason though, wasn't there?
Yes.
1993, Michael, high drama. Because you 92 strong crew, 91 strong crew, 90 strong. You guys are getting to a stage at this point where your dominance has been so strong that you're almost expecting to win. And that was a great crew, that 93 crew, wasn't it? Wasn't it?
Very good crew.
Yeah. And how did you take that? It wasn't an expected result.
Look, in luck and success. I mean, I always think that I went to 3 Olympics. The first one, everything went okay. The second one, 6 weeks after selection or 4 weeks after selection, the sixth man in the crew was diagnosed with cancer and died 6 months later. And he was always a very hard man to replace. And that's just bad luck. And in Montreal, we won our heat and were looking good. And we had a week between heat and final, and one of the crew had a collapsed vertebrae in his back and had to be replaced. And the crew that won the bronze medal, New Zealand, we'd beaten in the heat. And we finished 5th in the final. Well, luck and success, they're closely linked. You can wake up on the day of the head of the river and have someone with a cold, tonsillitis. Those things have happened to my crews.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, one of the boys who was the number one pick in the crew, the number one sculler, and he'd won the year before, and he collapsed with 150 metres to go. They still finished second, but that was bad luck. And he was a terrific lad and terrific athlete, and but it happened. And
it happened, yeah, absolutely. I remember being on the bank. You'd go down to the bank, you'd see the Wyvern, the black Newington crew, Michael.
Yeah.
That was 93. And you'd be eager to see, you'd always know you'd see really nice technique. That was a 93 crew. They were just rowing down to the start. And when they'd feather, there was just one sound, You really did have a superior technique. You really had something superior.
Yeah, they were good. They were a very good crew.
Very good crew. Yeah, they were a very good crew. Yeah.
I felt very disappointed for them.
Yeah.
And
yeah, you felt disappointed.
Because they were all good boys.
Yeah. No, that's right. So that brings me to 94, Michael. That seemed like a bit of a surprise win. But may not have been to you, but it didn't. It seemed the year before was more expected than your win in 94.
Well, 94 was the first year of. They reduced, instead of 8 crews wide, they had an A and a B final, so we had to row heats.
Oh yeah.
And we'd been winning on and off through the season, but that was, some respects, par for the course, because I told you sometimes we race tired. And,
right.
But generally,
it's
when we'd been at Penrith, they'd done very well. And anyway, we lost our heat, had a good think about it, and looked at our graph of our speed and changed our plan.
Right.
And,
wow.
Had a good win when it counted.
Because at that time the heat was a different weekend, though, wasn't it?
It was on Thursday.
Was it?
The heat was on a Thursday.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. And so you regrouped, right? Mm-hmm. Wow. You're coaching at Sydney as well as Newington at that time. Do you keep that up for very long, Michael, or what?
I did at 91.
Did you like that? Was that good?
Yeah, I used to enjoy it. A lot of work, mind you. I don't know how my good wife put up with it, but I'd get out of the speedboat at Newington and get into the Sydney speedboat.
Oh, really?
And
really?
So I was a busy boy.
You're a busy boy then.
Yeah.
Were you? How did that work? Why would you do that? Was it a professional situation, or were you just wanting to do it because you liked doing it, or?
Wanted to. Well, we're obviously doing something right with Newington. And,
yes. You wanted to see what you could do with that.
Yeah.
What did happen there? What did happen on that journey?
Oh golly.
Going back a bit?
Going back a bit, yes.
Yeah, fair enough, Michael, fair enough. Things do change over time. The Bob Buntine partnership seemed like a sweet spot for you at Newington. And then things change a little bit at Newington, don't they? What brings about the Joey's change, the Joey's years?
Things were changing a bit within the school that I wasn't too happy about. And
Because it makes a big difference if you've got the school support, doesn't it,
yes,
Michael?
and there are areas where I wasn't getting the support.
Yeah.
And I thought, no, not my way or the highway, but
you weren't being able to do what you...
I wasn't enjoying it, and I've been doing it for a long time, and opportunity came at Joey's, and I went to Joey's, and I had a very nice 5 years there.
You had a nice 5 years there.
Yeah, loved it.
It was very competitive there. You were, weren't you?
Yeah.
You're knocking on the doors for the wins.
Yes.
Almost straight away.
Yeah. But it did occur to me, look, while at Newington I might have had, I said, the 6 seconds in 9 years and then won 8 out of the next 11. I thought, I'm not going to wait 6 years.
Did you feel like the 80s was happening again? Is that what you mean? Is that what you mean?
Bit that way. I think I just had enough.
Yeah.
And
how did you know it was the right decision? Yeah, you just had enough. Yeah,
I always wanted to. I always think back to my parents. Both died at 67, and for a long, long time I thought, well, I'm not going to wait till I'm 65 and retire. I thought 60 seemed. In fact, I was going to. Going to Joey's was instead of retiring at 55, so I went and worked another 5 years, and then 60 I thought was long enough.
Yeah, fair call. We're leaving Newington, Michael, walking out of the gates for the last time. Are you a sentimental man at all, or you're just very logical?
No, sentimental, yes.
Yeah. Was that hard?
Yeah, well, it's funny, my wife drove me into school on my last day because I was going to go and have a few drinks with a few other members of staff afterwards and didn't want to drive home. And as I was getting out of the car, she said, "You're 55 years of age and you're finally leaving school."
Wow. Joey's was a great school. You had a great time there.
Yeah. I felt it was very similar to Newington in many ways.
Did you?
The boys, etc. It was a good place to work. I enjoy it.
Yeah, okay, great. Some people have theories about why Joey's and Riverview may not have been successful, but they're on the water. Do you have your own opinion about that at all? Or
Well, I've often thought Iggy should never lose.
Yeah, that's right.
With the water they have to train on.
Right, you have thought that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Charlie Rowe in 1990, Michael, what about rivalries and everything? Like Mike Singer said that they weren't a threat. I was under the impression that our 1990 crew gave you guys a bit of competition, a bit of threat. Was that the case? Did you ever feel threatened by that 1990 crew from Riverview? Because they were full of good athletes.
Not that I can recall.
You don't recall that?
No.
You don't recall any rivalry there?
No.
No? Okay.
I'm busy doing my own work.
Busy doing your own work? Yeah. Wow, okay. What about rivalries, though, for other coaches and schools? You know, did you mentioned Rusty Robertson. Was there any others with the schools, with the coaches at all? Oh,
yes. I mean, they're good coaches all around. But I suppose I used to think it was... I didn't mind so much Shaw winning.
Didn't you? Why is that?
Well, because they knew what it was about, but it was more of a worry if someone else won, and then they might get to know what it's about and keep winning.
I see. Oh, well, let's rewind there. You didn't mind if Shaw won?
Well, it was better Shaw to win than someone else.
Why was that?
Well, because someone else might learn what winning's all about and come back again.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Just a Michael Morgan thing.
It's a Michael Morgan thing. But what is it about winning, Michael? Like, you know, it's something about winning with you is... I know it's better than losing, but yeah, where does that competitive... You know, did you ever start thinking about legacy? Were you competitive in that way? I want to put down a good, nice record as a coach. Because you certainly did.
No, never did, and that's why I didn't worry about retiring.
Right.
I thought, I'm not here to set any records or anything.
Right.
I've had a good run and I've enjoyed doing it.
Right.
And there are other things.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Very good. Other things like sailing, or?
Yes, like sailing.
What if you did coach Australia with the peak of your knowledge? What if you had the Australian crew again? What do you think would happen?
Look, well, one, I don't think I would. That I look around. My life at home and family were always important, and I soon worked out that back in the days I was coaching, the divorce rate amongst coaches that was reasonably high.
Is that right?
Being away for months a year was not something I wanted to do.
Right. It's not something you wanted to do.
No.
Okay. Was anyone ever trying to go that way with you? You mentioned the Sydney Rowing Club there.
Well, no. I mean, when I chose the career path to go teaching, I was very happy to do that.
Right,
and,
sure.
So it was a career choice.
Yeah,
and,
career choice. Yeah.
That I wasn't interested in pursuing.
I spoke to Richard Curtin. He said you were very astute. He said that you were very perceptive and you drove the change. You wanted to do more than when you guys were rowing together.
Coaching started while I was, in a sense, in the boat.
Yeah. What do you think your rowing philosophy is in a nutshell?
Well, I think, one, you want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I'm still very much from work out where you want to go, and then work out how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
It's working out how to get there, planning.
Yeah.
I guess I became in time a meticulous planner.
Michael's staggering statistics as a coach. 1990s. In 31 starts at the head of the river, Michael Morgan's crews placed a staggering 25 times for 10 wins, 12 seconds and 3/3. Newington College became an Olympic nursery, producing Matthew Long, Robert Yarling, James Jeff and Stephen Stewart, Stephen Handley, James Chapman, Richard Wern and coxswain Stuart Carter. He won 8 Head of the Rivers in an 11-year period, winning the Australian Schoolboy 8 title 8 times. Michael Morgan is unique. Well, I think you've got a broad intellect, Michael, and I think you've applied it to rowing over a long time. You set the bar, you raised the bar. Was it your consistency? What would you say?
Maybe consistency? No, I think you've got to be a good student at it. Well, it was very good to me. Yeah, made wonderful friends. And
thank you very much for coming on.
Okay, thank you.
If you enjoyed the interview, please consider tapping one button below. Lastly, a quick thank you to Michael Doyle, Jack Singleton, Mike Singer, Mike Cumey and Richard Curtin.
Better do that again.
It's been another world. I'm Chris Thomas, and thanks for watching.